Hey, welcome everybody. I am live, coming to you live, and thanks for stepping into my show. And please remember to subscribe if you like what you see, or if you don't like what you see and you just like me and you want to be nice, subscribe. I'm really glad that you joined in today. Today's going to be a lot of fun. I like coming up with top 10 lists, and I know I like reading other people's top 10 lists. I'd love to see what yours is. Of course, today, what I want to do is go over my top 10 favorite horror books of all time. Some of them might not be completely in the horror genre, but if it has suspense or something supernatural in it, something scary, it's it's listed in there. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pull this up just so I can kind of go over everything on it. So what I'm going to do a little cheat here. I'm going to do a baker's dozen or a baker's 10. So I'm throwing an 11th on there because I just couldn't do without this book on here. The Bad Place by Dean Koontz. He's one of my favorite writers. He's a master of suspense. This one, it went to some dark places, and it is fantastic. It's a delicious read. You know, the premise of the story captures you right from the start. I remember when it started. It starts right off with uh, with this guy that just wakes up. He's got like these diamonds in his pockets. He's in the middle of an alley somewhere, and he doesn't have any recollection of what just happened. And so every day he keeps waking up in different places, not knowing what happened to him that night. So he decides to hire a private detective to follow him and watch him and see where he goes. And where he goes, wow, this story goes some places. It's a really great one. Um, Number 10 is Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. You can't have a horror book list without adding Edgar Allan Poe in there. Black Cat was the first story I ever read of his, maybe even the first horror story I ever read. His whole collection of short stories is nothing short of genius, of course. And this was my first taste of his writing, and the creepiness cannot never be forgotten. And it inspires me in writing today. Um, the next one, number 9, is Mine by Robert R. McCammon. This guy doesn't write bad books. I've Every time I've read one of his, it's just been fantastic. And I can't say that about any other writer, but his are always entertaining. He's fantastic. Um, so Robert R. McCammon, Mine. It's Mary Terror uh, um, is the lady that's in it. She's the most vicious, frightening villain ever created. I mean, she's so diabolical. She ranks near the top of all psychos for me. And oh man, this book just cooks. Obviously she she steals a baby, from the hospital, and so now it's the mother's journey to try and track her down and get her back. And with that kind of a premise, I thought, okay, well, I've kind of hasn't this been done a lot before? I've seen some Annie movies like this or something like that, but there's nothing like that. It's a lot. There is so much more to this, and wow, Mary Terror. You just got to read it just for her. And of course, I listened to it on audiobook, and the narrator was so fantastic. She was just great. The next one is also by Robert R. McCammon, Boy's Life. If you like to read those coming of age stories, this one is a great one. It's also a mystery, has some supernatural elements. If this could easily be shifted higher on my list. It's that great. He paints such a vivid world, and he captures the adventures of a young boy growing up in the South, intertwined with a mystery. It's a fantastic read. This other one is become a new favorite writer of mine, Joe Lansdale, or Joe R. Lansdale. Uh, when The Other Side of Elsewhere came out, my book, one of my fans reviewed it, and he wrote saying, "This book, you write a lot like Joe Lansdale. This reminds me of The Bottoms by Joe Lansdale." And I'm like, oh, okay. So I wondered, who is that writer? I know I've heard of him before, so I decided to look him up and started reading some of his stuff. And wow, fantastic! And if anyone compared me to him, wow, that's high praise. But this is the first one I've read of his. It's called Paradise Sky by Joe Lansdale. It's a Western. And Lansdale is the only writer I can compare to Mark Twain. And that's pretty crazy. But this story is like a mix between Twain and Louis L'Amour. And I just didn't want this book to end. It is just a great read, great entertaining read. The next one, number 6, good old Clive Barker, The Damnation Game. This one, wow, I read this when it first came out years and years ago. This is as close to evil as I ever want to get. It was truly disturbing and horrifying. The pictures that this guy paints with his words, and some of the places he goes, it's wow, he had no holds barred on that one. It's a great one. Of course, I've always liked the Hellraiser movies as well, and a lot of his movies, of course, Candyman. But yeah, if you ever want to dive into a really good diabolical book, the Damnation Game by Clive Barker. The next one, we're on number 5, The Hour of the Dragon by Robert E. Howard. Wow, Robert E. Howard is such a favorite writer of mine. Comes from the 1930s. He's really good friends with H.P. Lovecraft. Both Howards. But yeah, they were very similar in writing styles, although where H.P. Lovecraft would usually end his stories with the character being twisted slowly into madness. Howard seemed to have a heroic ending when a hero would finish it. And of course, he is most well known for Conan the Barbarian. So the book I read, which was Under the Hour of the Dragon, but at the time it was retitled as, The Conqueror, Conan the Conqueror. And so I read it, and wow, it's closer to a novella, but it's definitely Conan the Barbarian at his best. And he's not the Conan that maybe you read in some of the comics or even in some of the movies. No one can write Conan like the creator of, which is Robert E. Howard, and he writes with so much with supernatural and sorcery and horror. I mean, you're going to find horror in those stories of Conan, and that's what I love. And Conan, he's a very intelligent character. He's not dim-witted at all. He's very smart, very charismatic, and he was a fierce character. So if you ever want to read some good sword and sorcery, there you go. That's as closest to fantasy as I ever really get in reading. And then he has a collection of horror stories. Wow, some of his short stories of horror are some of the best. I just love them. Number 4, The Keep by F. Paul Wilson. The movie came out in 1983, and I wanted to see it so bad. My mom wouldn't let me see an R-rated movie at that time. I was too young for that. But she couldn't object to me reading the book. And that's how I got around. When I saw a movie come out and I wanted to see it, and it was R-rated, and I couldn't go see it yet, well, I'd go buy the book, and I'd read the book. And this one was probably really one of the full-length horror stories I read. And there's some parts in it that really gave me nightmares. It was, by the way, the book was much better than the movie, which I've heard. Paul Wilson commented that they may be remaking it. So that would be fantastic if that came out and was done really well. Anyway, the great thing about F. Paul Wilson, he's always been one of my favorite writers ever since. And when my first book came out, The Other Side of Elsewhere, and my publisher wanted me to get onto Twitter and onto Facebook and all those things. When I got onto Twitter, of course, I'm following my favorite writers and everything. And when I clicked to follow F. Paul Wilson, surprisingly, he followed me back. And I thought, oh, well, that's incredible. Now I have the ability to actually message him. And so I did. I messaged him. I said, hey, I love your books, blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested in reading my story. I'd love to see what you think of it. He said, I would love to, but my to be read pile is pretty huge right now. Maybe come get back to me within a couple months. And so I did. It took maybe 2 or 3 times over the next few months. And then he did. He read it. He got it. He read it, and he commented on it, and he gave me a good review that I could use for it. And wow, to actually have one of your favorite writers and mentors actually read your book. I mean, it's just a surreal moment in my life. Number 3, of course, you haven't heard me mention Stephen King yet, but here he is. Pet Sematary by Stephen King. One of very few books that gave me nightmares. And it was written so well. I love the story, love the premise. Graveyards, digging up bodies, bodies coming to life. Yeah, it's a great one. I love the movie too. The first movie was actually pretty good. Number 2, yes, Dean Koontz gets up there again. This one, I almost wanted to make it number 1 because it kind of is Intensity by Dean Koontz. It just doesn't get much better than this. Of course, he's the king of suspense, but this one, it just starts right off and it doesn't stop. I just couldn't put it down. Of course, I listened to this one on audiobook, so I just couldn't push stop or pause. I remember being late to an appointment at work just because I had to stop and park and finish the story. It was, wow. It's Dean Koontz at his best for sure. And number 1, Night Shift by Stephen King. This one, it goes so many different places for me. After reading this short story collection, Night Shift, it just changed my world. That is the moment that I switched from writing action and adventure stories to writing horror. And when I wrote my first horror story, I knew that's where I'm meant to be. So that's why this book has to be number 1, because it's what really inspired me to start writing in the horror genre. And now I like to combine all sorts of genres in my writing. Of course, there's horror, but I love thriller. I love suspense. I love action. I love adventure. I love all those things. And that's what I always want to capture and entertain my readers with, because it entertains me. And I hope that what I write, because it does, entertain me, hopefully you find it entertaining as well. Yeah, the Night Shift was another funny one where the movie Children of the Corn came out. Once again, not quite able to go see it, but I could read the book, and that's what caused me to buy and read the book Night Shift. And there's 2 stories in there that really just creeped me out and really did give me nightmares. And I can only count, actually on this list, I think there's really only 3 that actually gave me a true nightmare, one that you had a nightmare. So it's very, I find it commendable when a story can cause something that impactful. But anyway, that's my top 10 list. I'd love to find out what yours is, or have any comments of maybe what you like, or maybe have some odds of what maybe object to some of mine, and that's totally fine. Anyway, I'm glad that you checked in with me on this list and checked out my channel. I'd love for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. Please do so, and check me out. Each week I like to do a video, as you can see on my YouTube channel. It's called Writing with Fire, and it's where I give some tips and some helpful information on how to write or how to improve your writing. It all comes from my own experience and everything that I've learned. And if there's anything I can do to help you as a writer or you as a fan, I'm all for it. You can also check out my website, www.brettmckay.com. So www.brettmckaybooks.com. That's BRETTMCKAY writeringbooks.com. And when you go there, you can sign up for my newsletter, which I try to get out monthly. And I love feedback, and I write back to everybody that writes to me. Um, I just think it's uh, the collaboration between writer and reader and fans. Um, I love doing that. It's actually my favorite thing to do. So I'm glad that you joined in here. I'd love to see you again. Subscribe to my channel, and I am checking out. So, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your um, Super Bowl weekend. Have a great day. Thanks.